Section 60 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Qing in Singapore. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 2 by Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bancroft Jolly. Chapter 55, Part 1. The stupid secondary wife, Dame Zhao, needlessly loses her temper and insults her own daughter, Tanchun. The perverse servant girls are so full of malice that they look down contemptuously on their youthful mistresses. We will now resume our narration with the Rong mansion. Soon after the bustle of the New Year festivities, Lady Feng, who, with the most arduous duties she had had to fulfill, both before and after the New Year, had found little time to take proper care of herself, got a miscarriage, and could not attend to the management of domestic affairs. Day after day, 2 and 3 doctors came and prescribed for her. But Lady Feng had ever accustomed herself to be hardy, so, although unable to go out of doors, she nevertheless devised the ways and means for everything, and made the various arrangements she deemed necessary. And whatever concern suggested itself to her mind, she entrusted to Ping Er to lay before Madame Wang. But however much people advised her to be careful, she would not lend an ear to them. Madame Wang felt as if she had been deprived of her right arm, and as she alone had not sufficient energy to see to everything, she bestowed her own attention upon such important affairs as turned up, and entrusted, for the time being, all miscellaneous domestic matters to the cooperation of Li Wan. Li Wan had at all times held virtue at a high price, and set but little value on talents of any kind, so that she, as a matter of course, displayed leniency to those who were placed under her. Madame Wang accordingly bade Tanchun combine with Li Wan in the management of the household. In a month, she argued, Lady Feng will be getting all right again, and then you can once more hand over charge to her. Little, however, though one would think it, Lady Feng was endowed with a poor physique. From her youth up, moreover, she had not known how to husband her health, and emulation and conscientiousness had, more than anything else, combined to undermine her vital energies. Hence it was that although her complaint was a simple miscarriage, it had really, after all, been the outcome of loss of vigor. After a month, symptoms of emissions of blood began also to show themselves, and notwithstanding her reluctance to utter what she felt, everyone, at the sight of her sallow and emaciated face, readily concluded that she was not nursing herself as well as she should. Madame Wang, therefore, enjoined her merely to take her medicines and look to herself with due care, and she would not allow her to disquiet her mind about the least thing. But Lady Feng herself also gave way to misgivings, lest her illness should assume some grave face, and, much though she laughed with one and all, she was ever mindful to steal time to attend to her health, feeling inwardly vexed at not being able to soon get back her old strength again. But she had, as it happened, to dose herself with medicines and to nurse herself for 3 whole months before she gradually began to rally and before the discharges stopped by degrees. But we will abstain from any reference to these details which pertain to the future. Suffice it now to add that though Madame Wang noticed her improved state, she thought it impossible for the time being for Tanchun and Li Wan to resign their charge. But so fidgety was she, lest with a large number of inmates in the garden, proper control should not be exercised, that she specially sent for Baochai and begged of her to keep an eye over every place, explaining to her that the old matrons were of no earthly use, for whenever they could obtain any leisure, they drank and gambled, and slept during broad daylight, or they played at cards during the hour of night. I know all about their doings, she said. When that girl Feng is well enough to go out, they have some little fear, but they are bound at present to consult again at their own convenience. Yet you, dear child, are one in whom I can repose complete trust. Your brother and your female cousins are, on one hand, young, and I can, on the other, afford no spare time. So do exert yourself on my behalf for a couple of days, and exercise proper supervision. And should anything unexpected turn up, just come and tell it to me. Don't wait until our old lady inquires about it, as I shall then find myself in a corner with nothing to say in my defence. If those servants aren't on their good behaviour, mind you blow them up, and if they don't listen to you, come and lay your complaint before me, for it will be best not to let anything assume a serious aspect. Baochai listened to her appeal and felt under the necessity of volunteering to undertake the charge. The season was about to close of spring, so Daiyu got a cuff back again. But Xiangming was likewise laid up in the Hengwu Yuan, as she too was affected by the weather, and day after day she saw numberless doctors and took endless medicines. Tanchun and Li Wan lived apart, but as they had of late assumed joint management of affairs, it was, unlike former years, extremely inconvenient even for the servants to go backwards and forwards to make their reports. They consequently resolved that they should meet early every day in a small three-roomed reception hall at the south side of the garden gate to transact what business there was, and that their morning meal over, they should after noon return again to their quarters. This three-roomed hall had originally been got ready at the time of the visit of the imperial consort to her parents to accommodate the attendants and eunuchs. This visit over, it proved, therefore, no longer of use, and the old matron simply came to it every night to keep watch. But mild weather had now set in, and any complete fittings were quite superfluous. All that could be seen about amounted to a few small pieces of furniture, just sufficient for them to make themselves comfortable with. Over this hall was likewise affixed a placard, with the inscription in 4 characters, "Perfected philanthropy, published virtue." Yet the play was generally known among the domestics as the Discuss Matters Hall. To this hall, Li Wan and Tanchun would daily adjourn at 6 in the morning and leave it at noon, and the wives of the managers and other servants who had any matters to lay before them came and went in incessant strings. When the domestics heard that Li Wan would assume sole control, each and all felt secretly elated, for as Li Wan had always been considerate, forbearing, and loath to inflict penalties, she would be, of course, they thought, easier to put off than Lady Feng. Even when Tanchun was added, they again remembered that she was only a youthful, unmarried girl, and that she too had ever shown herself good-natured and kindly to a degree, so none of them worried their minds about her, and they became considerably more indolent than when they had to deal with Lady Feng. But after the expiry of 3 or 4 days, several concerns passed through her hands, which gave them an opportunity to gradually find out that Tanchun did not, in smartness and thoroughness, yield to Lady Feng, and that the only difference between them was that she was soft in speech and gentle in disposition. By a remarkable coincidence, princes, dukes, marquises, earls, and hereditary officials arrived for consecutive days from various parts, all of whom were, if not the relatives of the Rong and Ning mansions, at least their old friends. There were either those who had obtained transfers on promotion, or others who had been degraded, either those who had married, or those who had gone into mourning, and Madame Wang had so much congratulating and condoling, receiving and escorting to do, that she had no time to attend to any entertaining. There was, therefore, less than ever any one in the front part to look after things. So, while Tanchun and Li Wan spent their whole days in the hall, Baochai tarried all day in the drawing rooms to keep an eye over what was going on, and they only betook themselves back to their quarters after Madame Wang's return. Of a night they whiled away the leisure hours by doing needlework, but they would, previous to retiring to sleep, get into their chairs, taking along with them the servants, whose duty it was to be on night watch in the garden, and other domestics as well. They visited each place on their round. Such was the control exercised by these three inmates that signs were not wanting to prove that greater severity was observed than in the days when the management devolved on Lady Feng. To this reason must be assigned the fact that all the servants attached, inside as well as outside, cherished a secret grudge against them. No sooner, they insinuated, has one patrolling ogre come than they add three more Siberian sort of spring josses, so that even at night we've got less time than ever to sip a cup of wine and indulge in a romp. On the day that Madame Wang was going to a banquet at the mansion of the Marquis of Jingxiang, Li Yuan and Tan Chun arranged their coiffure and performed their ablutions at an early hour, and after waiting upon her until she went out of doors, they repaired into the hall and installed themselves in their seats. But just as they were sipping their tea, they espied Wu Xindeng's wife walk in. "Mrs. Zhao's brother, Zhao Guoji," she observed, "departed this life yesterday. The tidings have already been reported to our old mistress and our lady, who said that it was all right, and bade me to tell you, miss." At the close of this announcement, she respectfully dropped her arms against her body, and stood aloof without adding another word. The servants who came at this season to lay their reports before Tan Chun and Li Wan mustered no small number, but they all endeavored to find out how their two new mistresses ran the household, for as long as they managed things properly, one and all willingly resolved to respect them. But in the event of the least disagreement or improper step, not only did they not submit to them, but they also spread, the moment they put their foot outside the second gate, numberless jokes on their account, and made fun of them. Wu Xindeng's wife had thus devised an experiment in her own mind. As she had to deal with Lady Feng, she would have long ago made an attempt to show off her zeal by proposing numerous alternatives, and discovering various bygone precedents, and then allowed Lady Feng to make her own choice and take action. But in this instance she looked with such disdain on Li Wan, on account of her simplicity, and on Tan Chun, on account of her youthfulness, that she volunteered only a single sentence, in order to put both these ladies to the test, and see what course they would be likely to adopt. "What shall we do?" Tan Chun asked Li Wan. Li Wan reflected for a while. "The other day," she enjoined, "that Xi Ren's mother died, I heard that she was given 40 taels. So now give her 40 taels as well, and have done." Upon hearing this proposal, Wu Xindeng's wife eagerly expressed her acquiescence by uttering a yes, and taking over the permit, she was going on her way at once. "Come back!" shouted Tan Chun. Wu Xindeng's wife had perforce to retrace her footsteps. "Wait, don't get the money yet," Tan Chun remarked. "I want to ask you something. Some of the old secondary wives, attached years back to our venerable senior's rooms, lived inside the establishment, others outside. There were these two distinctions between them. Now, if any of them died at home, how much was allowed them? And how much was allotted to such as died outside? Tell us what was given in either case for our guidance." As soon as Wu Xindeng's wife was asked this question, every detail bearing on the subject slipped from her memory. Hastily forcing a smile, "This is," she replied, "nothing of any such great consequence. Whether much or little be allowed, who will ever venture to raise a quarrel about it?" Tan Chun then smiled. "This is all stuff and nonsense," she exclaimed. "My idea is that it would be better to give 100 taels. For if we don't comply with what's right, we shall, not to speak of your ridiculing us, find it also a hard job by and by to face your mistress Secunda." "Well, in that case," laughed Wu Xindeng's wife, "I'll go and look up the old accounts. I can't recollect anything about them just at this moment." "You're quite an old hand in the management of affairs," Tan Chun observed with a significant smile. "And can't you remember, but come instead to perplex us? Whenever you've had anything of the kind to lay before your Lady Secunda, have you also had to go first and look it up? But if this has been the practice, Lady Feng can't be looked upon as being such a dreadful creature. One could very well call her lenient and kind. Yet don't you yet hurry to go and hunt them up and bring them to me to see. If we dilly-dally another day, they won't run you people down for your coarse-mindedness, but we will seem to have been driven to our wits' ends. Wu Xingdang's wife got quite scarlet in the face. Promptly twisting herself round, she quitted the hall, while the whole bevy of married women stretched out their tongues significantly. During her absence, other matters were reported, but in a little while Wu Xingdang's wife returned with the old accounts. On inspection, Tan Chun found that for a couple of secondary wives who had lived in the establishment, 24 taels had been granted, and that for 2 whose quarters had been outside, 40 taels had in each case been allowed. Besides these 2, others were mentioned who had lived outside the mansion, to one of whom 100 taels had been given, and to the other 60 taels. Under these 2 records, the reasons were assigned. In the one case, the coffins of the father and mother had to be removed from another province, and 60 taels extra had consequently been granted. In the other, an additional 20 taels had been allowed, as a burial place had to be purchased at the time. Tan Chun handed the accounts to Li Wan for her perusal. "Give her 20 taels," readily suggested Tan Chun. "Leave these accounts here for us to examine minutely." Wu Xingdang's wife then walked away, but unexpectedly Mrs. Zhao entered the hall. Li Wan and Tan Chun speedily pressed her to take a seat. Mrs. Zhao then broke the silence. "All the inmates of these rooms have trampled me under heel," she said. "But never mind. Yet, my child, just ponder, it is only fair that you should take my part." While ventilating her grievances, her eyes got moist, her nose watered, and she began to sob. "To whom are you alluding, Mrs. Zhao?" Tan Chun hastily inquired. "I can't really make out what you're driving at. Who tramples you underfoot? Speak out, and I'll take away your cudgels." "You are now trampling down yourself, young lady," Mrs. Zhao observed. "And to whom can I go and tell my grievance?" Tan Chun at these words jumped up with alacrity. "I would never presume to do any such thing," she protested. Li Wan too vehemently sprang to her feet to proffer her some good counsel. "Pray seat yourselves, both of you," Mrs. Zhao cried, "and listen to what I have to say. I've had, like simmering oil, to consume away in these rooms to this advanced age. There's also your brother besides. Yet I can't compare myself now even to Xu Ren, and what credit do I enjoy? But you haven't as well any face, so don't let's speak of myself." "It was really on account of this," Tan Chun smiled, "that I said that I didn't presume to disregard right and to violate propriety." While she spoke, she resumed her seat, and, taking up the accounts, she turned them over for Mrs. Zhao to glance at, after which she read them out to her for her edification. "These are old customs," she proceeded, "enforced by the seniors of the family, and everyone complies with them. And could I ever, pray, have changed them? These will hold good not only with Xu Ren, but even when by and by Huang Er takes a concubine, the same course will be naturally adopted, as in the case of Xu Ren. This is no question for any large quarrels or small disputes, and no mention should be made about face or no face. She's our Madame Wang's servant girl, and I've dealt with her according to a long-standing precedent. Those who say that I've taken suitable action will come in for our ancestors' bounty and our lady's bounty as well. But should anyone uphold that I have adopted an unfair course, that person is devoid of all common sense and totally ignorant of what a blessing means. The only thing she can do is to foster as much resentment as she chooses. Our lady, Madame Wang, may even give a present of a house to anyone. What credit is that to me? Again, she may not give a single cash, but even that won't imply any loss of faith, as far as I'm concerned. What I have to say is that, as Madame Wang is away from home, you should quietly look after yourself a bit. What's the good of worrying and fretting? Our lady is extremely fond of me, and if, at different times, a chilliness has sprung up on her part, it's because you, Mrs. Zhao, have again and again been officious. Had I been a man and able to have gone abroad, I would long ago have run away and started some business. I would then have had something of my own to attend to. But as it happens, I am a girl, so that I can't even recklessly utter so much as a single remark. Madame Wang is well aware of it in her heart, and it's now because she entertains a high opinion of me that she recently bade me assume the charge of domestic affairs. But before I've had time enough to do a single good act, here you come, Mrs. Zhao, to lay down the law. If this reaches Madame Wang's ear, I fear I shall get into trouble. She won't let me exercise any control, and then I shall, in real earnest, come in for no face. But even you, Mrs. Zhao, will then actually lose countenance. Reasoning with her, she so little could repress her tears that they rolled down her cheeks. Mrs. Zhao had not a word more to say to refute her arguments with. "If Madame Wang loves you," she simply responded, "there's still more reason why you should have drawn us into her favor. Instead of that, all you think about is to try and win Madame Wang's affections, and you forget all about us." "However did I forget you?" Tantren exclaimed. "How would you have me drag you into favor? Go and ask every one of them, and you'll see what mistress is indifferent to anyone, who exerts her energies and makes herself useful, and what worthy person requires being drawn into favor." The Yuan, who stood by, did her best to pacify them with her advice. "Mrs. Zhao," she argued, "don't lose your temper. Neither should you feel any ill will against this young lady of yours. Had she even at heart every good intention to lend you a hand, how could she put it into words?" "This worthy senior dame," Tantren impatiently interposed, "has also grown quite dense. Whom could I drag into favor? Why, in what family do the young ladies give a lift to slave girls? Their qualities as well as defects should all alike be well known to you people. And what have they got to do with me?" Mrs. Zhao was much incensed. "Who tells you," she asked, "to give a lift to anyone? Were it not that you looked after the house, I wouldn't have come to inquire anything of you. But anything you may suggest is right. So had you, now that your maternal uncle is dead, granted 20 or 30 taels in excess, is it likely that Madame Wang would not have given you her consent? It's evident that our Madame Wang is a good woman, and that it's you people who are mean and stingy. Unfortunately, however, her ladyship has with all her bounty no opportunity of exercising it. You could, my dear girl, well set your mind at ease. You wouldn't, in this instance, have had to spend any of your own money, and at your marriage by and by I would still have borne in mind the exceptional regard you had shown the Zhao family. But now that you've got your full plumage, you've forgotten your extraction, and chosen a lofty branch to fly to." Before Tantren had heard her to the end, she flew into such a rage that her face blanched, and, choking for breath, she gasped and panted. Sobbing, she asked the while, "Who's my maternal uncle? My maternal uncle was at the end of the year promoted to be High Commissioner of the 9 provinces. How can another maternal uncle have cropped up? It's because I've ever shown that reverence enjoined by the rites that other relatives have now more than ever turned up. If what you say be the case, how is it that every day that Huan Er goes out, Zhao Guoji too stands up and follows him to school? Why doesn't he put on the airs of an uncle? What's the reason that he doesn't? Who isn't aware of the fact that I am born of a concubine? Would it require 2 or 3 months' time to trace my extraction? But the fact is, you've come to kick up all the hullabaloo for fear lest people shouldn't be alive to the truth, and with the express design of making it public all over the place. But I wonder who of us two will make the other lose face. Luckily, I've got my wits about me, for had I been a stupid creature ignorant of good manners, I would long ago have lost all patience. Li Yuan was much concerned, but she had to continue to exhort them to desist. But Mrs. Zhao proceeded with a long rigmarole until a servant was unexpectedly heard to report that Lady Secunda had sent Miss Ping to deliver a message. Mrs. Zhao caught the announcement and eventually held her peace when they espied Ping Er making her appearance. Mrs. Zhao hastily forced a saturnine smile and motioned to her to take a seat. "Is your lady any better?" she went on to inquire with vehemence. "I was just thinking of going to look her up, but I could find no leisure." Upon seeing Ping Er enter, Li Yuan felt prompted to ask her the object of her visit. "My lady says," Ping Er smilingly responded, "that she apprehends, now that Mrs. Zhao's brother is dead, that your ladyship and you, miss, are not aware of the existence of an old precedent. According to the ordinary practice, no more need be given than 20 taels. But she now requests you, miss, to consider what would be best to do. If even you add a good deal more, it will do well enough." Tan at once wiped away all traces of tears. "What's the use of another edition when there's no valid reason for it?" she promptly demurred. "Who has again been 20 months in the womb? For is it forsooth anyone who's gone to the wars and managed to escape with his life, carrying his master on his back? Your mistress is certainly very ingenious. She tells me to disregard the precedent in order that she should pose the benefactress. She wishes to take the money which Madame once burned, so as to reap the pleasure of conferring favours. Just you tell her that I could not presume to add or reduce anything, or even to adopt any reckless decision. Let her add what she wants and make a display of bounty. When she gets better and is able to come out, she can effect whatever additions she fancies." The moment Ping Er arrived, she obtained a fair insight into Lady Feng's designs, so when she heard the present remarks, she grasped a still more correct idea of things. But perceiving an angry look about Tan face, she did not have the temerity to behave towards her as she would had she found her in high spirits of past days. All she did, therefore, was to stand aloof with her arm against her side, and to wait in rigid silence. Just at that moment, however, Baochai dropped in on her return from the upper rooms. Tan quickly rose to her feet and offered her a seat. But before they had had time to exchange any words, a married woman likewise came to report some business. But as Tan had been having a good cry, 3 or 4 young maids brought her a basin, towel, and hand-glass and other articles of toilette. Tan was at the moment seated cross-legged on a low wooden couch, so the maid with a basin had, when she drew near, to drop on both her knees and lift it high enough to bring it within reach. The other 2 girls prostrated themselves next to her and handed the towels and the rest of the toilet things, which consisted of a looking-glass, rouge, and powder. But Ping Er noticed that Shi Shu was not in the room, and approaching Tan with hasty step, she tucked up her sleeves for her and unclasped her bracelets. Seizing also a large towel from the hands of one of the maids, she covered the lapel on the front part of Tan's dress. Whereupon Tan put out her hands and washed herself in the basin. "My lady and miss," the married woman observed, "may it please you to pay what has been spent in the family school for Mr. Jia Huan and Mr. Jia Lan during the year." Ping Er was the first to speak. "What are you such a hurry for?" she cried. "You've got your eyes wide open, and must be able to see our young lady washing her face. Instead of coming forward to wait on her, you start talking." Do you also behave in this blind sort of way in the presence of your Lady Secunda? This young lady is, it's true, generous and lenient, but I'll go and report you to your mistress. I'll simply tell her that you people have no eye for Miss Tentran. But when you find yourselves in a mess, don't bear me any malice." At this hint the woman took alarm, and hastily forcing a smile, she pleaded guilty. "I've been rude," she exclaimed. With these words she rushed with all dispatch out of the room. End of section 60. Recording by Qing in Singapore.